We focused on that.
Recording in progress.
Oh, sorry.
So good morning and welcome to everyone to our library board meeting, both for those in person and virtually. Good to have the opportunity to meet and join the board, and Councillor Basnet and I are new to the board and certainly looking forward to working with you. And I just have a little bit to do this morning, so I'm going to call for an election of the chair, and then once we have a chair established, I'll turn the rest of the meeting over to the chair. So I'm going to start by asking for a motion for someone to be the chair for the library board.
Mr. Warden, I'd like to nominate Councillor Bazinet as our chair of the library board for the next 2 years.
Okay, so we have a motion forward to put Councillor Bazinet on the position of chair. Do I have a seconder for that motion? And that is Jane, I believe. So
Yes.
Thanks, Jane. So we have a motion on the floor. I'm going to ask if we can have a vote on that. Those in favor? And I believe that is carried. So Trevor, welcome to the position of chair, and I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, that was quick. So I guess first order of business for myself is we need to nominate a vice chair for the library board for the 2-year term of 2024-2026. So do we have anyone willing to nominate someone? Not seeing any hands. Nominate Nick Kester to remain as vice chair. Okay, all right. So we have a motion to move Nick as vice chair. Do we have a seconder to that motion? Sydney seconds. Okay. I'll call. All in favor? Next, looks like you're vice chair once again. How many years is that now, Nick?
I think this will add another 2 years onto my term here. So yeah.
Well, there you go. Okay.
Happy to serve.
Excellent. Happy to have you. Moving forward now for the approval of the agenda. Everyone has had an opportunity to read the agenda, so there is a recommended motion that the library board agenda for December 11th, 2024 be approved as presented. Is there any additions or omissions to the agenda? No, that's okay. Can I have a motion to approve, please? Patricia moves and Nick seconds. Any questions regarding the agenda? Not seeing any. All in favor? Okay, carried. Is there anyone that has a declaration of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Not seeing any hands, so we'll move forward to the minutes of the previous meeting. So recommended motion is the minutes of the Huron County Library Board meeting of November 13th, 2024 be adopted as circulated. Do I have a mover for these minutes? Councillor Becker moves, seconded by Jane. Any questions regarding the minutes? Not seeing any hands. All in favor? Okay, carried. And now presentations. So Jim, programming and community engagement update. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much. Let me just share my screen here. There's always a little bit of tech to figure out. There we go. All right. Hello, I am Jim Seal. I'm going to be talking to you about programming and community engagement today. I am the Programming and Community Engagement Coordinator here at the library. I've been working for the library since 2021. It's easy to remember because my son was born that year and he's 3.5, so I've been working here for 3 years. My work is divided between the library and the museum. I also do some fundraising work over at the museum. 3 things before I get started. Number 1, I can't take full credit for anything that I talk about in this conversation. I work with wonderful people across our 5 teams. So the credit should be shared among everybody that worked on these issues. Number 2, we have done a heck of a lot. So this is a truncated version of what we've done. I've tried to kind of focus on some of the special things we've done over the last year. And number 3, is just that I'm going to be kind of separating it into the two sides of my role. So I'm going to be talking specifically about programming. I'm also going to be talking about community engagement. So moving straight along into programming. I'm going to be talking a little bit about program approval and coordination. So everything that kind of goes along behind the scenes. I'm going to be talking a little bit about passive programming. I'm going to be talking about in-person events and, of course, our summer reading program. The folks that have been here for a while on the board have received a wonderful presentation from our summer literacy coordinator. So I'm going to do a shortened version of that, just talking about the view from 1,000 feet, so to speak. Program approval and coordination. There's a lot of programs that go on in the library across our 12 branches and 5 teams, and that kind of comes to me for approval. So basically, 4 times a year, there is a deadline for the next 3 months where, our teams and our branch managers and assistants can propose programming. It gets looked at to make sure that it's fulfilling our mandate and making sure that we are kind of on track with our values and that it's feasible to figure out. So that type of thing is kind of the program approval process. Coordination is more, there are a lot of things that the branches can book from admin, gets sent through our van system. So I mean everything from a giant Jenga game to chess sets to anything else that you can think of that might make it easier to do an event in person at the branch comes from admin, and that's something that I help coordinate as well. Passive programming is kind of anything that doesn't take a staff member being at a specific time in a specific place to kind of run the event. Passive programming is more things that you can pick up at the branch or things that you can do without too much staff intervention at the branch. So I have a few examples here. We've done a lot of passive programming over March break this past year and the year previous. The top corner picture of Bob the Book. That's Bob the Book, our mascot. It may or may not be me inside that suit. But the top picture there, he's holding a jar filled with Lego, and that's one of our passive programming things. Basically, kids can guess how many pieces of Lego are within the jar, and if they are correct, they get the whole Lego kit. So that type of thing doesn't take a whole lot of staff time, but it is something to kind of that interests the kids. Below that, we have a picture of Bob wearing our eclipse glasses. So we had an eclipse earlier this year. You may have heard about it. But basically, we handed out hundreds of these eclipse glasses. We had one of those good problems where we ran out because there was a significant interest in having those eclipse glasses. So along with our STEM programming and everything like that, we were able to make sure that more people were able to safely observe the eclipse. And then the third picture there is one of our winners for the Tween Reading Challenge. So basically, this is a raffle that goes on every month. There is a $20 to $25 gift card prize each month that is picked locally by the branch manager. This young man won that for reading a book, and his ballot was the one that was picked in that month. So it's a kind of initiative to make sure that people are reading and promoting literacy among our tweens and teens. Along with these, there are buttons, signs, other takeaways. I mean, for Pride, we had lots of Pride and library focused materials. For Newcomer Welcome Week, we had, newcomers welcome here signs that were able to be taken away. So anything that is kind of a giveaway that people are able to take home that represents our values would count toward this passive programming. In-person programming events. I realized after I submitted this that in-person is a bit of a confusing term because I'm talking about virtual events as well. I'm just talking about things that are happening synchronously. So you have a facilitator or a presentation that is going on at a certain date and time. So some of these are the virtual keynote events that we have been able to provide. So I mean, it is a big county. It's difficult to get everybody together. So some of these bigger events we do virtually, and it allows us to get people from outside of the county who are able to participate. So 3 examples of that are our Freedom to Read Week keynote, where we were talking about book banning in the United States, and we had one scholar and the OLA, the head of the OLA, the Ontario Library Association, was also one of our panelists. We had a panel for Pride, which was about drag, the art form drag. We had 2 people speaking about that art form. We also had 2 best-selling authors speaking about their work for Ontario Public Library Week, who are Elizabeth Renzetti and Heather Marshall. More of the in-person, in the flesh things that we do, a lot of it is booking facilitators and entertainers. So I mean, we've had a group called Trash Theater that does art through recycling in, the list goes on here, Traveling Stage, lots of programming around the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, Indigenous programming, STEM programming with electric circuits, and then funding some of the things that are going on in different parts of the county. So that would include the Speakers Saturday, as well as Huron County Author Talk workshops, which was a literary festival that happened at the museum in partnership with the library. Here are a few of the quotations. I'm not going to read them all because of time, but here are a few pictures from our event. So the bottom picture is our Pride panel. We had an author and a drag artist speaking about the art form of drag. We had one of our panelists say basically that they couldn't have imagined this happening as a kid growing up in Clinton who spent a lot of time in the library. So that person felt very seen and acknowledged by this presentation. We had another quotation from somebody who took part in our Constable Soldan came and was a police story time participant. So I'm sure that kids have that connection with the police that are policing their communities. And then the third one was from the OLA director talking about our wonderful Freedom to Read Week panel. Another big thing that we do 2 months of the year, 3 or 4 if you're counting kind of promotion and cleanup and everything, is the summer reading program. Once again, I'll give you one guess who's in the suit. It's me. But those are our 2 summer literacy coordinators that some of you heard speak earlier this year, Nadine and Morgan. It is 18 weekly sessions for the summer reading program across our 12 branches. We had nearly 500 total registrants for those events. And 2 things that we did this year that were kind of big improvements from last year. We improved communication with the branches, so it was much easier for the branches to know who was registered and where we were in terms of how full the events were, and then expanded opportunities for participation. Not everybody can get to the once a week, session that is happening. So we had a lot of opportunities for kids to participate without having to be there at that specific date and time. So that's kind of programming. I'm going to speak a little bit about community engagement. So the 3 parts that I've kind of broken it up into are libraries transforming communities, outreach, event coordination, and liaising with community organizations. Libraries Transforming Communities is an initiative that we do where basically it is trying to have conversations within the community, create a sense of community hub around the library, and seeing what the pain points within the community are and seeing what the kind of a grassroots group of citizens can do about those pain points. So we had 6 conversations in 2024, 3 in Zurich and 3 in Blythe. We had an additional, so that's a large group of people kind of like this, where I would be up at the front and we would ask specific questions that have been designed by community organizers at the Harwood Institute. We also had 20 additional ask exercises, which are smaller groups, basically either individual interviews or with 2 or 3 people at a time to basically broaden the different voices that we hear from about the community. So some main themes of those conversations, I have them on my phone because we were still kind of working on them when this was submitted. People are looking for a vibrant, close-knit, and welcoming community that is also focused on the heritage within the community. The 2 main things that people talked about being challenges within the community were participation and communication. Participation, the traditional group of volunteers within the community are aging out of those volunteer roles. They are looking at a new set of volunteers who are interested in volunteering, but are looking at kind of short-term, this is the goal-oriented volunteering, as opposed to sitting on a board and continuing on and making that longer-term commitment, which can be really difficult for some of these organizations trying to fill those spots. The second piece was communication. So trying to understand what is going on within the community. People were saying it's hard to find out what's going on. Where do I look? It's just a very fractured, a fractured landscape when it comes to where people access information based on generation and a whole bunch of other factors. So we're looking at ways to kind of figure out those things, whether it's having the Meet Your Neighbor nights that we've had previously, or we were talking about having a Zurich 101 where we're having various organizations come and speak about what they do, that type of thing to facilitate solving some of those problems, or at least lessening the issues that are surrounding them. The final thing with LTC, we have monthly innovation space meetings with staff. So that is a meeting where we get together and staff speak about what they're learning about their communities. They are the front-facing folks that are able to hear first what people are talking about within their community. So being able to have that conversation and have those pieces bubble up and affect the way that we're running the library is extremely helpful and lets us know what people are thinking within our communities. Outreach events. We go to a lot of outreach events. This is one of the things we believe that the library is for everybody, and trying to kind of find people where they are, whether they are current library users or not, and showing them what we have to offer is something that we take very seriously. Here are a few examples of events that we go to. So Goderich Children's Festival, the Pride Festival, Multicultural Festival, Threshers, Fall Fairs, and all the Calling All 3-Year-Olds, which are for next year's kindergarten kids going into the schools. So we try to be at those to make sure that we're connecting with those young families. And then the third piece of this community engagement is liaising with community organizations. So if there are partnerships when it comes to other organizations, oftentimes that is on my desk and my responsibility. So that could involve coordinating pool passes and making sure that the community pools are accessible within our collection. It involves outreach opportunities. We get emails saying, can you come to this event? Collaborative programming is a big one. We do programs in partnership with other organizations quite a bit. So coordinating that and making sure that everybody's getting what they need out of that programming. And then representing the library on committees, including Immigration Partnership, Indigenous Community of Practice, Conservation and Climate Change, Affordable Housing and Homelessness, and Mental Health Promotion. So a few other elements of my role that didn't fit cleanly into those 2 things. I I sit on the Alice Munro Festival board. It is no longer called the Alice Munro Festival, but I continue to sit on that board. The Multicultural Festival, I help with the children's area, which we count as outreach, but also coordinating food vendors and offstage programming for that festival. And finally, I work for the Huron County Museum doing fundraising. So if any of you have a donation for the museum, I'd be happy to talk to you after the meeting. So thank you very much. That's just kind of the Coles Notes version of what we're doing in terms of programming and community engagement. I know I've been talking fast and long, but I could go on for the rest of the meeting about these things. I appreciate your attention and being able to talk to you about this. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Does any member of the board have a question for Jim or a comment? Yes, Nick.
I just wanted to congratulate Jim, you and your team. You wear a lot of hats, and community outreach can be a real thankless job sometimes, and you've got a lot of ground to cover. And there are only so many hours in the day, but you guys, I've never seen, in the many times that I've seen you guys around, I've never seen you break a sweat. So I just want to, again, congratulate you all on that.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Nick, have you seen him after he takes the mascot uniform on? Is he sweating after that? No. Some hot summer days with that on, I could imagine that Jim might be sweating.
That's all behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah. As long as you don't let them see you sweat, you could sweat on the behind the
Right,
scenes,
exactly.
no problem.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Thank you for your comment too, Nick. I'll add to that, Jim. I don't know if it's so much a question, but we talked about participation and communication, and as a council member, we seem to hear this often, and I'm trying to get a better understanding because I feel like the communication it's everywhere, and I'm asking questions of people. Well, how are you not finding this stuff? Like, even for council meetings, we now live stream them.
Yeah.
You can watch council meetings after the fact. And I don't know if people just don't want to navigate through the process to see this stuff. Because there are maybe 3 or 4 steps to get to where you need to go. That makes it a little difficult. So is it a navigation problem, do you know, or?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
It's something that we've been trying to figure out. One of the things that I think it is just our modern society is the most information saturated society in the history of the world, right? Like, we are bombarded by information all the time. We can figure out what's going on, in Washington, D.C. or Vietnam as quickly as we can our neighborhoods, right? So, I mean, I think that the infrastructure for learning about global information is just ahead of the local information at this point, and trying to figure out how to better get that to people is something that we all really have to work on. It's tricky because, I mean, at the same time, I do think people need to take a level of ownership over finding that information and doing their homework and making sure that they're looking for the information in their community. But at the same time, like, one of my community engagement pillars is find people where they are, because, like, we can say, you don't come to the library, so if you wanted to come to the library you could, but I mean, finding people where they are and making sure that we are able to get the information to them, while tricky, is important to make sure that they're able to engage, right? So yeah, it's a really difficult situation. I think that strides are being made in terms of the community calendars and things like that. One thing I've heard is they could be easier to use, but I mean, that's a tech thing as well. So trying to figure that out. If I had a solution, I would shout it from the tops, but
same here.
Yeah, it's a difficult one for sure.
Yeah, and I think you're right. There is so much information out there. It's almost maybe overload for people as well, right? The other thing you mentioned was about participation and the lack of volunteers and, maybe some service clubs aging out, which we are seeing. And, far too often I hear the comment that, oh, the youth don't want to do anything. And that's so untrue, right? I think the issue that I see from my experiences and conversations with youth is they want to get involved, but when they try to get involved or they do get involved, their voice doesn't matter even when they're at the table.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So that dynamic needs to change somehow.
Mhm.
So, and I don't know how to change that, but, you know, if service clubs and stuff are going to be aging out, they should actually maybe consider doing the ideas that our youth have and having a little bit of change within their own organization as well, if they want to keep younger members, right? So, yeah, okay. Any, yes.
Thanks,
John.
Trevor.
Yeah.
Thanks for that presentation, Jim. The volunteers, that's really struck a note with me, like Trevor said. Coming from the south end, Zurich, the Lions Club, we had to shut it down because down to 5 members, 2 senior members, the other 3 guys all work for a living. And we couldn't get that next group to step forward. I'm too busy. I'm too busy. Well, I look at myself like, how busy?
Yeah,
Don't give me that crap. Because I'm likely one of the busiest guys going there because all the different organizations I sit on, but I was proud to serve as a Lions Club member. We tried our darndest to tap into younger people, everything. But, you know, I've got kids in hockey, I've got kids in soccer, you know, we all did.
yes,
But we made that time to go to these other, and I don't know, our society, it's a communication thing.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to be at every event. Just come and help us out at the events. Get the ball rolling. And I know the Egg Society in Zurich struggles with memberships. And you likely heard that in your
Mhm.
conversations.
Yeah.
And it's tough. You know, Blue Water used to have 3 fairs, Hensel, Zurich, and Bayfield. Well, they're down to 2 now. And Bayfield does pretty good because of the tourist aspect there. But Zurich really struggles, the volunteer side, to put a program together. It's tough.
hmm yeah, it is for sure.
And no matter what advertising, I know my daughter Jenna does everything online to promote their things, but and I still go out and help run their bingos and everything else
Yeah,
to make it profitable so they can spend their money back to provide it for the next generation.
well, and that's the importance of, we all know what the importance of service clubs is, because the money that they raise all goes back into the community, right? So if we're losing our service clubs, where is that money coming from?
Back.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, and that's the message, right? If you're enjoying, you know, your local arena, for example, or your local library, you know, those take fundraising dollars to keep sustainable, right? So, yeah. No, thanks again, Jim, for your presentation. If there's no more questions, oh, yeah, Sydney, go ahead.
Just a question as you guys were speaking about like youth involvement and how to get the next generation interested. I really think Jim's point about like meeting them where you're at is absolutely vital, because in my own conversations with my friends or my younger siblings, when I ask them why they're not as interested in getting involved in service clubs or like government, they're like, I truly just don't know how. Like, how did you get to where you are? And for myself, I was very fortunate. My dad served on a number of boards. He was very involved in the community. And he said, oh, Sydney, like if you apply, this is kind of how it works. So I was fortunate to have that resource, but really, to your point, Jim, like just meeting people where they're at, answering their questions and kind of saying like, this is how you can get involved.
Mhm.
And I think, I don't want to overreach here, but when we had that really great conversation with the Tanner Steffler Foundation, when we were
Yes.
talking about advocacy, it was so interesting to see in that conversation how excited the youth were about possibly working with the library or having events here. And they just didn't know it was possible until we had the conversation. So thank you for your presentation. I think you're doing some phenomenal work, and that's just what I wanted to comment there. So
Great comment. And I would agree. The YMCA with United Way has a youth leadership program, and they were struggling to get people to sign up. So they reached out to me to ask them if I go to the high schools and talk about the importance of the leadership program. And they had the program, they had full registration after I went there. And it's key. You have to go to them. They're not going to come to you. But if you take the time and go to them and make them aware of the importance and maybe the benefits of it, it's amazing how interested they are. And they had me as a guest speaker at one of their sessions. And it was amazing for me because there were different kids there, right? So there were the popular kids and maybe the not so popular kids and maybe kids that struggle with poverty in their family, but they were all getting along and talking at the table. If they were in their high school, that probably wouldn't be happening. So what that did was it brought all kinds of different, youth together, and they built friendships within that 16-week program, right? So yeah, it's good stuff. So yeah. Okay. I think we can move on. Pardon me? Oh, Helena, yeah, sorry. I didn't want to move on without you. My apologies, Helena.
Well, first of all, Trevor, that you're leading a good discussion, but I would suggest with these virtual meetings that you assign someone to watch the screen. So, because it's so easy to miss someone that wants to speak or contribute from
Okay.
online.
Yeah, we can do that.
And second, I really want to thank Jim. I keep running into him at event after event, and he always has that warm smile that people can really respond to. But two of the themes that have come up is the information overload, and part of it is that we are fighting algorithms that are designed to present content that maximizes time spent on the app. And guess what? Goderich does not maximize user content on social media, user time. So there are serious challenges. And the other comment with volunteers, some great thoughts there, but I think one of the things that we need to think about is not ask youth to participate in our priorities, but to ask youth what their priorities are. I've faced this with working with newcomers, and Jim was there. We had a group in Goderich, and they said, well, in order to make social contacts, they should volunteer at our churches. This is a great way to become engaged, but not if you're a Muslim, if you're Orthodox or agnostic. So we have to really, I know youth are very concerned about the environment, for example, from talking to them. But how does the Lions Club connect to environmental conservation? No idea.
Yeah.
I know they do good work, but we really need to ask not for responses, but to really listen to what they want. Thanks.
Thank you, Helena. And I didn't mean to miss you there. So we'll have someone that elbows me. Lou will be the one that elbows me, or I'll have Warden Heifer point his finger at me. Okay. So my apologies. All good comments. Before I go to the motion, is there any more comments or questions for Jim? Not seeing any hands, so I will read the recommended motion that Huron County Library Board receives a presentation from Jim Seal, Programming and Community Engagement Coordinator, dated December 11th, 2024, titled Programming and Community Engagement Update as presented for information. Do I have a mover? Sydney moves, seconded by Patricia. Any questions? All in favor? Okay, so moving on to board member comments. Do any board members have comments at this time? Jane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I participated in a telephone conversation with library boards. Is it 40,000 to 79,900, Beth? Is that the group I go to?
I don't know, but that sounds about right, Jane.
I always sign up for the wrong one, and someone very kind says, here, we've put you in the right session. So this is, I think, my third or fourth session, and I really need to comment on the work of the Huron County Council. when I hear the struggles from other boards, it's things like, well, no one reads the agenda. Even the CEO of the library doesn't necessarily follow the process. He or she just comes in, and I can see Jim's reaction there. Just
I
comes
don't have
in
a
and
good poker
says,
face, sorry.
here's how you're going to vote. And another thing that really struck me was the appointment of board members was really, here's who we want. You people on the library staff or the cultural services staff just need to figure out how to make it work. And there have been appointments where the main focus is to drastically cut services and funding to the library without any fulsome conversation about what a library can offer. I almost emailed Beth that night because I thought this can't really be happening in all of these boards, but apparently it does. So I really wanted to thank Beth and her team and the Huron County Council for making sure that libraries in Huron County are seen as really viable and important, because that just doesn't happen.
Thank you for your comments, Jane, and we will express that to the rest of county council as well at our next council meeting. I'm sure Warden Heifer can make some comments on behalf of county council. You know, it's nice to hear some positive comments, right? Not too often do we get the positive stuff, so it's great. So greatly appreciated. Do any other board members? Sorry, go ahead, Jane.
Well, as I said, I know this kind of culture just doesn't happen by accident. Lots of people are working really, really hard to make sure that this is an important part of living in Huron County. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Do any other board members have any comments at this time? Helena, I got you this time.
Congratulations. You learned
thank
very
you.
quickly.
Yeah.
Go to the head of the class.
Yeah.
But yeah, my comment is that this board has been, I've really like the dynamics of this board, that board members are prepared for meetings, and we are also very open to discussion, because sometimes you get ideas that you miss some nuances, and very open to any kind of comment, and consider everything thoughtfully, and decide things on its merits. There's never afraid to say something, and that to feel listened to is very important. And this is kind of off the board, but we've talked so much about programming, and we've talked about literacy, and had this strange idea, just for you, Jim, is what if we had disinformation maze, where you had a choice based, one was true, one was fake, and if you chose correctly, you advance. It could be done either in person or virtually. But okay, that's my wild idea for today. Thank you.
Media literacy is important, so figuring that out would be very cool. That's a great idea. Thank you.
Would you like Jim to be in his mascot? You know, just throwing that out there, Jim. Yeah, you never should have said it was you in that mascot uniform.
Every chance I get.
Yeah. Do any other board members have any comments? Not seeing any hands, so we'll move on to reports of county librarian, and Beth Rumble is going to be busy for the next several minutes. So now the monthly update.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. This is an update that comes with the board every month with just information about what's happening at our branches within the Huron County Library system. So it is very much populated by information that's received from branch staff and admin staff, that Jenny then compiles to bring you this report. We are considering making some changes to the report. So if there's information that you don't see reported on monthly that you would be interested to know, and vice versa, if there are things in there that you see reported monthly that you don't feel need to be in there, please reach out, and we will consider that in the coming months as we look at revising that. I usually just highlight a few key things from the report and then any questions I can respond to. So just firstly, there's a quote there about how the library has gotten even better from an 11-year-old. That is in response to the youth hub that's happening in Exeter. So showing that that is really resonating there, which is wonderful to see. There is also mention of a draft facility agreement that has now been vetted by a second partner from a local municipality as well as legal. So I will be sending those out to our local municipalities this week. As is mentioned, not significant changes, but just clarifications of, when we say heated to a temperature, we've actually provided what that number might be. Same thing with cooling as well. And we have added a schedule for cleaning. Most of our branches are already cleaned at that schedule, but it's helpful to have that in writing just to establish that, to ensure that our libraries are maintaining their cleanliness for the public. There is mention of the Clinton Shelving Project. That's been significant and is ongoing. We're excited to see that come to fruition. We're anticipating the new shelves arriving next week. So Jenny and the technical services team, with help from staff at the Clinton branch, have been working hard on that. And lastly, I'll just mention that ILO, which is our interlibrary loan system, I talked about that briefly last month, but that's the materials that we share with libraries throughout the province. It did launch on November 12th. However, it relies on Canada Post, so it was only active for a few days. And we're just waiting for that to be settled before we can continue to share books with other libraries in the province. And I will leave it at that, but happy to respond to any questions.
Any questions from board members to Beth at this time regarding the monthly update? Not seeing any hands, so I do have a recommended motion that I will read. That Huron County Library Board receives a report from Beth Rumble, County Librarian, dated December 11th, 2024, titled Monthly Update, October 24, as presented for information. Do I have a mover? Warden Heffer moves, so I have a seconder. Helena seconds. Okay, any questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay, so on to action plans. Rumble.
Thank you again through you, Mr. Chair. These are plans that we develop annually, the library leadership staff, so that includes admin staff and our branch managers, to determine how we're going to advance various strategic priorities and goals throughout the year. So the first attachment in that report is a review of what we've achieved in 2024. We've certainly made great strides in several of the areas. Recognizing that this is a staff document, if there are any questions about some of the acronyms that we may have included in there, or anything that is unclear to board members, I'm happy to respond. There are a few items that we have delayed into 2025. Some of those we have begun and just not completed. Our staff manual is well underway. That's also something that feeds into our engagement survey plan. That was something that we found would help enhance communication. Things like, for example, we've indicated we're going to implement Library Impact Ontario. That is something that is a survey that is run by Toronto Public Library, available to all libraries in Ontario to use. And it's how we measure our tech services. So that's a survey that patrons respond to as well as staff, so that we can begin to benchmark where there's greater needs and where we need to make investments in our technology or our training with technology. What are other pieces that I thought to clarify? The other one was Project Outcome. So that again is an online tool. It was developed by the Public Library Association. That's an American institute that is available to us for free. And again, it helps us measure the outcomes of folks attending our program. So I think that's a really important best practice, that when we run these programs, we're also measuring whether they met the goals we intended to achieve. So we've started that work. We will more purposely be rolling that out in 2025 on specific programs as well. I'll leave it at that unless anyone has any questions with that. But before I respond to questions, I'll just briefly walk through some of our plans for 2025. I'll mention this as well when I go through budget, but just so that board members are aware of what activities we have planned for the upcoming year. Certainly there's lots of training in there. We've got indications of sending staff to mental health first aid training, emotional intelligence training, the usual conferences that we send our staff to. There's lots of collection work included as well. We will be doing a collection audit early in the year. That's a diversity audit, and then responding to that audit by making adjustments to our collection. In 2025, we'll be planning system-wide programs and promotions for Pride, Truth and Reconciliation, and Welcoming Week. There's one in there that says complete the relocation of the OGS collection. That's the Ontario Genealogical Society collection that was previously housed in the log cabin in front of the museum here in Goderich. That's currently at library admin being cataloged, and then will become available to the public at the Seaforth branch. That will mean there's a lot more hours of access to that collection because the log cabin was only open about once a month. So we're excited to see that. That also means that we'll be reorganizing the Seaforth branch. Those who recall that branch from our tour, currently adult materials are on the lower floor and children is upstairs. We're going to be switching those as well. So the OGS collection, along with all of the adult materials, will be going upstairs in that branch. We also are completing work in the Clinton branch. So in addition to the shelving project, in 2025, we'll see some furniture upgrades as well to that facility. Lots of innovation happening. Some of the work we're doing with youth includes the digital media stations. So those are Apple computers with software for creativity, sound editing, all of those types of pieces. So those will be going in our Seaforth, Exeter, and Goderich branches. We also have the Cricut, which is a vinyl cutter. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. And that will be circulating throughout the system for the public to use and also have staff trained on. Anything else that you may have questions about? As we've discussed at the board level, we will be doing some additional promotion for the lockers. Those are lending lockers that are located outside the Goderich and Bayfield branches that we've seen a slow uptake, slower than we'd like. So looking at focusing some promotions on increasing the usage of those. In the 2025, it says complete LTC cycle. That's the short form for Libraries Transforming Communities. Just for clarity, in 2025, we'll be focusing on the Bayfield community. And then obviously, or maybe not obviously, but we will be continuing work with youth. That's one of our strategic priorities, and that's primarily through funding through the McCall-McBain Foundation. So in addition to those digital media stations, looking to implement a youth council. So we'll be trialing that in 2025 to see how that, bringing together representatives from various youth organizations, various youth organizations from across the county, and meeting with them to hear about what their organizations are doing, and bringing all of them together. So that will begin in 2025, and then also some ongoing space work to develop physical spaces for youth. And then our final priority of literacy, we'll be promoting Freedom to Read Week and Digital Media Literacy Week, ongoing short story contest. We're hoping that will continue in 2025. Making sure we have strong partnerships with some of our literacy partners in the community. So CEL is the Center for Employment and Learning, and navigating that as they go through some changes as well. And then Jim mentioned about calling all 3-year-olds is what Participate in CATIO stands for. So that's when students are registering for their entering kindergarten, that the library can be on site to also speak to the services that are available to the library. And that's when we would provide them with resources such as 100 books to read before kindergarten, and introduce them to some of the other services and programs that are available at libraries. I will leave it at that. As you can see, there's more in the plan, but any questions with respect to the 2024 update or plans that we have for 2025, I'm happy to respond to.
Any questions for Beth at this time from any board members regarding the action plans? Warden Heffer.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted some clarification, Beth, on emotional intelligence. Can you tell me what that's all about?
I can do my best high level. I have yet to receive that training as well, but we have had some conversations with the person who will be leading that training. And a lot of it will focus on recognizing how you are communicating and what nonverbal cues you're giving off when you're communicating, and also picking up on those. And the big part for me, I think, will be recognizing that sometimes it's about when someone responds to you in maybe a less than ideal way. It's more about what's going on with them, and maybe they've been triggered by something else, or there's something else going on, and it's not about me. Because often we can see one heightened response can create a secondary response that's more heightened. So really looking to kind of everyone look inside themselves and recognize in others that maybe this is about something more. And then same thing when you realize, oh, I've been triggered and I'm responding in a certain way. As you do that with practice, being able to maybe not respond in a heightened way.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's good information. I always believe in the 24-hour rule.
Mm.
So when I coached hockey for over 20 years, I'd always have a parent meeting at the start of the year. And I would just say, I won't talk to you until 24 hours after a game. If it's regarding ice time, they're not happy with their child's ice time or whatever it might be. Don't approach me or have a conversation until 24 hours. Because usually after 24 hours, things kind of calm down, right? And it worked out really well for me. Over 24 years, I had one person approach me in a lobby after the game, and all I said to him was 24 hours, right? So, I think it's a good method to live our own lives with too. When we react to something, you're angry at first, but if you just give yourself 24 hours, it's amazing how things change in 24 hours, right? So, I had a question, Beth, regarding the lending lockers. What is that?
So they are a piece of technology, physical as well. I encourage you to swing by the Goderich branch, and it's when you go online to place your holds, instead of saying you want to pick them up physically at the Goderich branch, which would limit you to picking up your items when they are open.
Okay.
You can select the locker as your location, and then you can pick them up 24 hours a day,
Okay,
7 days a week.
nice.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's done online? Or is it, you can call or?
It could be done at a branch, like if you go to a branch and you have the hold place, you can say, I want the hold placed for the
Okay,
Goderich locker. So-
okay,
So yeah, it can be whether you're placing the holds online or in person or over the phone.
good. All right, thank you. Any other questions for Beth regarding the action plans? So there's a lot going on, as we just heard, so.
Just want to comment.
Yep, John, and then Helena, you have your hand up, so I'll go to you next.
The connections your team is making with the little kids all the way to our seniors. That is so important, because as people go into the workforce, they kind of get away from the reading stuff, but the connections at the nursing homes, that is really, I know at Blue Water, they really appreciate that part. And I know talking to the people at Queensway, the same thing there. It's really, they get back into it again. And I see people as they retire, well, I got nothing to do. Friend of mine was over there. I've read 4 books this week already. And I looked at him, you're reading books? Like, he was a meat cutter
Yeah,
for years.
yeah,
And now he's got time to sit and read, which is good.
it's a good story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's that transition from up through, but to get them started as the young folk, to keep that instilled in them. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, good comments. Helena, you had a comment or a question?
Yeah, well, first, I'm very impressed with the action plan that very ambitious, but really addressing objectives and figuring out how to measure whether or not they're achieved is important. But sometimes I have a question about how do you measure things that are hard to measure? For example, you mentioned moving the children's area and Seaforth downstairs and the adults upstairs. But how do you measure whether the children feel safer or the parents think their children are safer being in sight of the staff, or whether it's a perception or a reality? So yeah, there are challenges, and I'm really impressed with what you've done so far. I guess maybe the perfect is the enemy of the good in this case.
Okay, thank you, Helena. Do we have any more questions or comments regarding the action plans? Not seeing any, so I will read the recommended motion. Excuse me, that where are we here? The Huron County Library Board receives a report by Beth Rumble, County Librarian, dated December 11th, 2024, titled Action Plans as Presented for Information. Do I have a mover? I'll have Nick move and Helena will second. Any questions? Not seeing any. All in favor? Carried. Okay, on to the next item, which is the draft 2025 Huron County Library budget. And these are always fun times talking about budget. So Beth, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, always love talking about the budget and all of the thought and planning that has gone into it. This does reflect key priorities for 2025, specifically strategic goals of recognizing the unique needs of individuals and groups in the community, taking innovative approaches to programs and operations, ensuring the community is aware of the full complement of library services, collecting feedback from the community, ongoing efforts to engage with youth. There's also staff training and evaluating improving library spaces, goals included in that. And as you will have seen from the action plan that we just reviewed, some of the key projects are the completion of the Clinton branch refresh, the Seaforth branch reorganization, updating interior signage in Clinton and Seaforth to complement those space updates, introducing our skip the line loans. So that is where items are non-holdable and they're just available in the branch. So you may walk into the branch one day and the newest bestseller is just available instead of having to place your name on a potentially long hold list. Printing services will be enhanced through photocopiers in the branches. We're also increasing our investment in our digital materials such as ebook and e-audio in this budget. Libraries Transforming Communities will focus on the Bayfield community in 2025. We'll also be entering stage 2 of our youth engagement. So as I mentioned, that includes the digital media stations in Exeter, Seaforth, and Goderich, some more furniture and space upgrades for youth spaces, creation of the youth organization, as well as some facilitation programs and snacks for the youth as well. We also do in the budget have funds that were initially raised in 2022 for booking print management software for our public access computers. That will be carried into 2025 with plans to roll out a printing app to facilitate printing services and payment for printing services as well. Additionally, maintaining health and safety of staff and the public is paramount in the key elements and prioritizing in budget items. Looking to capital, which I believe if you are in the PDF of the budget is on about page 8. Capital items for 2025 support branch upgrades, health and safety, computer replacement, and our materials budget. Our capital materials budget includes our print materials, as well as our e-titles with perpetual license. So those are e-titles that we own in perpetuity. And our object library items are also included in that capital budget line. With respect to our e-titles, ones that don't have an expected life of longer than 5 years, such as our metered ebooks or things like our magazines, those are included in our operational budget line. The capital budget does have McCall McBain project work in 2025. That's those digital media stations and furniture. General furniture replacement for 2025 includes multiple club chairs we found the cleaners used during COVID really deteriorated the material on those. So we're replacing multiple club chairs in 2025. There's also a bit of shelving to support the skip the line loans, replacement of a book cart, and a new desk in the Seaforth branch. In the budget in January, this change was made after this was submitted to you. There's also an additional $2,000 for the Seaforth refresh that was included as operational, but it'll actually be expended on capital materials. So that does not impact the levy, but it will look a little bit different in the January version that you see. Looking at the computer replacement capital items, those are more minimal than they have been if you were looking 5 years ago as a result of the IT fleet model. Where our new computers, the replacement cost of those is spread over 4 years and is captured in our operational budget line, which I will speak to in a moment. Capital computer replacement costs in 2025 include several new early literacy iPads, tablets for robotics programming, and again, this is another item that is not in this version because we just received word somewhat recently about our point of sale system that we're looking to implement in 2025. There is an additional $5,000 in the version you will see in January to include Square point of sale terminals based on the solution that we'll be able to move forward with. Again, due to some changes that hadn't been made, that won't impact the levy. So any changes that you see in January won't actually impact the levy, but there will be changes to the capital budget at our next meeting. And then finally, I've talked about it a little bit, but funds that were initially raised in 2015 in hopes of a new Clinton branch, when we became aware that wasn't happening with the municipality installing a lift, we're expending those on the shelving in 2024 and the furniture upgrades in 2025. Moving into operational funds. So if you're looking at the PDF in the agenda on page about 9, speaking to our revenue, just to be clear for all members, but particularly those that are new, when our provincial grants, those represent the annual funding that we receive from the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Gaming. The federal grant revenue are summer student grants that we have applied for and hope to receive to support our summer reading students. The services to municipalities is the funding that we receive from Perth South. So they contract for services from ourselves because they do not have a library. They've been sent our budget request and I presented to them in November. So we will wait to hear from them. As I had indicated, they have signed a contract for 2025 with both Stratford and St. Mary's, which aside from the last year has been typical that they've contracted with all three of those three libraries, Stratford, St. Mary's and ourselves. The donations revenue line is not what we expect to receive in this year, but donations that we expect to use from previously received donations. Most of that is to support branch programming and branch projects. It is increased a little bit in 2025 as a result of spending related to the youth project. So those funds from McCall-McBain. And then our third-party revenues, as a reminder, that's items we're reimbursed for, such as printing costs, laminating costs, lost or damaged materials, and purchases that are made on behalf of, if the Friends of the Library are looking to purchase something and it makes more sense for the library to purchase it, and then the Friends group to reimburse us. It's a bit lower this year, just because more of the McCall-McBain funds are being realized in the donations line as opposed to the third-party recoveries line. Moving on to expenses, with respect to staff wages, that does include a cost of living increase for 2025. There is also a 2-year part-time contract position included in our staff wages that will be to advance youth engagement work, and it's fully funded through McCall-McBain funding. Staff hours have been increased slightly, as previously we weren't paying for staff who were doing split shifts and driving from one branch to another within the same day. So that's been included in there. And there's also a small increase in staff hours to accurately reflect time spent in staff meetings. There's a new budget item in there for this year called wage reallocation. Those are the funds that the library contributes to the climate change specialist position. Moving on with expenses, the equipment rentals and leases line, this is where the IT fleet costs are captured. You will see a significant increase in that line this year. That's a result of the library no longer being eligible for educational pricing. So that's had a significant impact. And also tablets were not previously included in the fleet replacement. However, they are, so that we can ensure that those are being updated on an annual schedule as well. The small tools line you will see is decreased by $15,000. Those were funds that were raised in 2015 in anticipation of the Clinton branch moving. As we are not moving, we no longer need those funds. So those are not carried forward into this year. The budget line for maintenance contracts, that is our consortium agreement with the Ontario Library Consortium. We frequently refer to that as OLC. And that is for our integrated library system that powers our catalog. So that's the majority of what is in that budget line. It now also includes annual maintenance for the pickup lockers, as well as the collection management software. And that is the software that will allow us to do that collection audit for diversity purposes, but it also allows us to really maximize where material should be throughout all of our 12 branches as well. In the external printing line, you'll see a slight increase. That's to accommodate for printing magnets with library hours. Those are proving extremely popular, so we need to add more budget to ensure we have a sufficient number to print every year to meet that demand. And then also included in that line is the interior signage project that I meant, as well as various posters, brochures, and outreach supplies. Our security budget line, that reflects where we pay for the panic staff alarms that all staff wear when they are in the branches to ensure their safety. Our conference budget line considers that in 2025, we will again be sending staff to the Interlibrary Association conference, and there's other small gatherings such as the Arupo Nottawa Saga training and some subject-specific opportunities through the Interlibrary Association as well. And our staff training budget line includes the rollout of our new staff training framework, and that will really ensure that we have well-rounded staff, and it includes training in areas such as first aid, mental health, customer service, working with vulnerable populations, as well as our all-staff meeting is included in that. And just a note for board members, guidelines typically suggest that training and conferences accounts for about 1% of our staffing budget. So we're not quite meeting that threshold, but we are fairly close. Our telecommunications budget line is increased. This is to add one cell phone to each of our town branches that would support outreach opportunities, but also can be used in the branch to enhance staff safety if they can carry it when they're out in the stacks, and also better help patrons when they're out in the stacks. And additionally, it serves the benefit of helping with photography so that it's easier to take photos of happenings and events in and outside of the branch. It will also ensure continuity of operations. If we're seeing internet connectivity issues, they could be used temporarily to act as a hotspot and still ensure that we can support our patrons. Our newspapers and magazines line, we now call that our non-capital collections to include a broader range of materials, and that's things such as our seed library, our recreational and pool passes, or things like carrying cases for our lending laptops. And that line's been decreased to better reflect actual costs that we've seen year over year. The branch maintenance grants, just so that everyone understands what that means, are the funds that we provide to our local municipalities in recognition of providing a facility for library services. Our electronic resources budget line has been increased. That's for the purchase of more of those metered ebooks, the ones that expire after a certain amount of time or a certain amount of checkouts, and also to support the growing popularity of our platforms, Hoopla and Canopy. Just a couple more program supplies. That reflects the programming that's planned in the branches. That is primarily offset in the donations budget line that you will see through fundraising. Portions that aren't offset through fundraising include our countywide programming, funds for the new youth organization, menstrual supplies if we're needed, although we do have a large grant that's incoming. New to that budget line is a small amount of funds for each team to ensure they're all able to provide a base level of programming. Typically in the past, all programming has exclusively been done through the donations that individual branches receive. So we felt that that was something that was wise to add to ensure that level of equity across the branches. And lastly, promotions and public relations. That includes items such as our e-newsletter subscription, our Canva subscription, and a small amount for each team to promote their programs through our social media, Facebook and Instagram sponsored posts. We do, as a library, always look to work collaboratively with other agents and organizations to increase our capacity as well as theirs. And that's been really instrumental to our community hub project and just our ability to have a greater impact on the broader community. If there are any questions on anything, I'm happy to respond. This is your first look at the budget, so we will have it come back to you in January as well for final approval at that time.
Thank you, Beth. A lot of information there. Obviously, budget is full of information and numbers. So any questions from any board member at this time for Beth regarding the budget? Helena?
Yes, you measured that there's a standard for how much of the budget should be spent on training. Is there a standard for how much should be in reserves? Or is that determined locally by need?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I would have to investigate if there's a set percentage that is advised to be in reserves. In Huron County, the library does not have its own specific reserve. Any surplus in any given year is rolled into the broader county reserve.
You're good with that answer, Helena?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. Any other board members have any questions regarding the budget report? Not seeing any hands, so I will read the recommended motion that Huron County Library Board receives the report by Beth Rumble, County Librarian, dated December 11th, 2024, titled Draft 2025 Huron County Library Budget as presented for information, and further that the 2025 budget be brought forward to the January Library Board meeting for approval. Do I have a mover for this motion? Patricia moves and Helena seconds. Okay, any questions? Not seeing any. All in favor? Okay, carried. On to the policy review, which is Friends of the Library policy update. Beth, once again.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. For context for our new board members, at the library, the initial time that you see the policy, it will be brought forward with all of the markup, including highlights of additions and changes. Any questions can be responded to or suggestions for changes. And then in the following month, a clean version of the final policy will be brought forward to you. So only minor changes in the Friends of the Library policy for you at this time. But if you have any questions or suggestions, happy to receive those.
Okay. Helena has her hand up.
In item 1.4.2, the second bullet point, it refers by reason of their participation on the board. And shouldn't that be in by reason of their participation in the Friends of the Library group, or am I missing something?
Beth.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So just to clarify, you're looking at 1.4.2, Friends of the Library groups will abide by all board policies. Am I looking at the right spot?
Yeah.
That's just to indicate, to ensure that any policies that the board here approves, whether it's our programming policy, our outreach policy, which that's actually included, to ensure that they're also operating under the same policies with which all of the library staff would operate.
Okay, but my question was in referring to bullet point number 2 under that, which refers to participation on the board, and they are not on the board.
Directly.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to suggest, and I actually have the person who drafted this policy here, that is referring to the Friends of the Library Board. Jim, would that be correct?
Yes.
We
Yeah.
can clarify that.
Is that a good enough answer for you, Helena? Clarification?
Yeah, because the first part refers to the county board, the second part refers to the board, and it's not clear that it's not the same board.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We can clarify.
Yep. Welcome. Any other questions regarding the Friends of the Library policy update? Not seeing any hands, so I'll move to the recommended motion that Huron County Library Board accepts a report by Beth Rumble, County Librarian, dated December 11th, 2024, titled Friends of the Library Policy Update as presented for information, and further that the draft Friends of the Library policy be brought to the January board meeting for approval. Do I have a mover? Sydney moves and Councillor Becker seconds. Any questions? All in favor? Passed. Okay. There are no correspondence on the agenda, correct? All right. Financial statements. They're there in front of you for information. Is there any questions regarding the financial statements? Not seeing any hands, so I'll move to the motion that financial statements for the month ending October 31st, 2024 be received. Do I have a mover for this? Patricia moves and Nick seconds. All in favor? Carried. We do not have any close to the public session. Next meeting is going to be Wednesday, January 15th, 2025 at 9 a.m. So this is officially our last meeting of 2024, being Warden Heifer and myself's first meeting. You know, I would like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy Holiday and all the best in the new year. Hard to believe that Christmas is not that far away. I don't know where 2024 went, but I think we say that every year, right? So it has definitely flew by, and I hope everyone has a safe and happy holiday as well, and enjoy some family time, please, right? So I will look for a motion to adjourn. Let me read it, Warden Heifer. Huron County Library Board meeting adjourned at 10:13 a.m. I have a mover, which is Warden Heifer. Do I have a seconder to that motion? Nick, seconds real quick. So I don't need to ask any questions. All in favor to adjourn? All right, Carrie, good meeting, everyone. Happy to be the chair and happy to, meet all of the new people that I don't know right now. So thank you. Good meeting.